So good afternoon, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. Now, I want to tell you the story of 6 dreamers that were sitting in a room with a serious track record behind them. And 2 years ago, we decided to leave our former occupations and dedicate ourselves to a vision we had. We called it the Forest City, or Growth Economics 2.0. And we made an organization we called Venatata, an NGO. That Venatata in biblical Hebrew means you shall plant. You shall plant a tree. And today, what I'm going to do is tell you the story about how in 18 months we managed to affect the life of hundreds of thousands of people in Israel. Now, what we're going to do, you can see at the bottom of my presentation, we're going to talk about the challenge for a bit, and then about our proposal, about what we've done, and then I'm going to invite you to join us in what we can do together. So first of all, my name is Aviv Baylis Lerner. I'm the grandson of Yudke Baylis and father of Maya and Drey with my beautiful wife, Maya. And in the past decade, I went for 9 times to the concentration camps and ghetto where my grandfather lost his whole family. And my grandfather, not only did he survive the Holocaust, he crawled out of a pit of 11,000 murdered ones. He went back into the ghetto, saved 22 babies, had a love affair, went to Israel, built a home, built a family, and here I stand before you. Now, my question over the years when traveling with him was not only how did he survive an apocalypse, but I was asking how did he thrive in apocalypse? And that's kind of my question here today, because we're going through a pretty serious change on this planet now and as humanity. And I'm asking, how do we thrive this? How do we live beautifully through this? So I'll start with the challenge. When we're looking at our growth model in our cities, that as Rotem explained very cleanly, and also Colin, thank you, that our cities are growing very, very quickly. They're growing like a forest. And the problem, and that's why we're here in this convention, is that our cities and our culture is consuming like a wildfire. And if we look at our economic growth models, we can see that these cities, when they grow, will see growth on our economic model charts. But this is kind of a dissonance because at the same time, we are destroying ecosystems around us that are supplying our needs as a culture, as individuals, as communities. The nature reserves out of our cities are producing our air. We're growing our food out of our cities. We're letting the water infiltrate out of our cities and not inside our cities into the ground. And one of the things that we realized in our organization is that we like when an economy is growing. That's a really beautiful thing. It's a beautiful word. Economy is taking care of our needs, and growth is also beautiful. But something about this growth needs to be updated. We need a system update for how we maybe perceive our economy. And the teacher that I like to learn from, the place where I want to take the information for updating our economy, is this beautiful thing that essentially, if you look at it really deeply and closely, you'll see a city here, okay? Our jungles, our savannas, our forests, Mother Earth, these ancient ecosystems that have been surviving here for millennia, some of them for millions of years, passing through fluctuations in the climate around them and in the world around them. And there's something about these systems that has so much knowledge and information. And one of the things that we're proposing and we're looking and trying to do is how do we take this information and bring it into our economy? How do we update our economy? And one of the things that I realized, and my partners around me, is that we need to create an organism that will have the ability to facilitate the updating and taking this knowledge of the forest and bringing it into our culture, into our civilization. So we were looking inside the forest for this thing, okay? I was looking for an organism that has the ability to be an administrator for a systemic update. And if you look under the ground here, what you'll see is this incredible organism, okay? Now, what you're looking at here is something that the scientific community calls it the Internet of Things. you're looking at a microscopic image of fungi. Okay, this is the body of a mushroom. And when you look really, really deep into this thing, you can see an organism that kind of works like the internet. Now, where our internet can speak with humans and with machines, but this web can speak to every single living organism on this planet. And not only does it speak with them, it can infiltrate their cells, live on their skin, live in the soil, in the ground. It's acting as a kind of connective tissue, as a vascular system, like a lung, like a nervous system. And the way it acts in there is something that I feel that we can really learn from. And that's kind of what we learned in our organization. We were looking for an organism that has the ability to update an ecosystem. And what we saw is that fungi, in studies that the scientific world has observed that fungi, it does a lot of things, but one incredible thing it does is it takes nutrients, energy, and excess carbon from a tree that is photosynthesizing, taking it from one tree and bringing it to another tree. And many times it chooses the trees that it gives the energy to will be the trees that will be the next stage of evolution for this ecosystem. It's trying to make I'm trying, I can't know what exactly it's trying to do, but it's helping an ecosystem progress and develop. So after we learned from these mushrooms, I want to present what our vision of a city can be, of a human culture. We call it the Forest City. This is a beautiful work of art by Jessica Perlstein, an American artist. And what we're thinking is that as a culture, and Colin spoke about it for a bit, we need to think about how we're gonna completely take responsibility for all of our waste, for all of our food production, and even for our oxygen production. We need to really understand where our edges are and how we can take responsibility for this inside of our culture. Now, our ideal, our aim is not only to decrease our damage. We want to be a carbon positive culture. We want to produce more, just like a tree, just like a forest that produces more than it needs. Okay, the trees, they give carbon into the soil when they have enough of it. They don't use all of it. And also we don't use all of our energy. And we need to learn how to make this happen in the city. We want a city that is community positive, that's building communities, creating connections, creating business relations and ecological business relations, which I'll speak to in a moment in the next slides. And we want a human positive city, which means well-being. It means people are happy. It means people are healthy. It means people are being educated and learning to be versatile and understanding what's happening to the world around them. We call this growth economics 2.0 because we don't want our economy to stop growing. We want it to grow in a beneficial way for the whole community around us. Now, one of our biggest teachers was an amazing man called Jaime Lerner in Brazil. In the 70s, he took a collapsing metropolis called Curitiba in Brazil, and he became the mayor of this giant city. And in a few years, he was able to create an urban planning model that really changed the way that cities were perceived all around the planet. He created amazing transportational planning and waste management and recycling and cultural and economic models that really created a thriving city out of that collapsing metropolis. But something about this, and that's something we learned from Lerner, and I as a learner am learning from him once again, is that after 20-something years that he was mayor and he left, the city didn't continue to prosper as it was when he was mayor. And one of the things we realized is to create a forest city, we can't have it only top to bottom. We need this riddle to be solved by the millions of people inside our culture. The forest city will be solved in a grassroots approach. Has to be decentralized and people need to take responsibility. And that's what we did in our organization. And that's what I want to tell you now. It was 2 months before the climate marches that Greta Thunberg organized. And I looked at this situation and I was like, I don't just want to protest for the climate. I want to do something. So we put out a post on our Facebook page. And we said that for every share of this post on the right, we're going to plant a tree in the soil of the cities in Israel in the next year. In 3 days, over 4,000 people shared this post, and we had a serious challenge on our hands. And we were trying to think like mushrooms, think like an ecosystem, because we were looking at the city and we were like, okay, let's plant 4,000 trees, but where? There's so many different types of soil, and who does it belong to? And what do the community want? And who's going to take care of it and defend it afterwards? And what we did, we put out a query on Facebook, okay? And the hundreds of people answered this. Some volunteered to plant trees, some organized events, some were agronomists, and some were office workers. And people volunteered, and in a month, we had planted over 1,000 trees in the cities in Israel, in places that people organized a cultural event around this, in dozens of events, with music and art and the community coming together. And something really interesting happened. Now, we were working with this, okay? And after 4 months, we decided to go on another campaign. And this time, wait a sec. This time, something amazing happened. Before, we were interacting. Remember, mushrooms can speak to all kinds of organisms. Before, we were talking only to single people, to individuals. And in this campaign, suddenly big organizations came. Cities, a city funded an event for 200 families for planting trees in the fairy kingdom of the forest. And Hope Media, a giant media outlet, joined and led the campaign together with us. And we had companies like Teva Pharmaceuticals who bought a workshop for their employees to plant trees in a rehabilitation center in Israel. So something interesting was happening, and we planted over 2,000 trees in this campaign, and a lot of doors were opening. And we started developing an economic model, which I love calling growth economics 2.0. We started selling workshops to companies, and their employees were planting trees in rehabilitation centers, which is a beautiful win-win situation. And then something incredible happened. About a year ago, we were about to launch a corporate campaign, and we were selling a lot of workshops to companies in Israel. And then, like a week before our first workshop in this campaign, COVID-19 happened. And then our life was in chaos all around us, great uncertainty, no one knows what to do. And we decided to do something really interesting, kind of a leap of faith. We went to our community. We went, let's decentralize this. And we sent a crowdfunding campaign to raise money to build 100 therapeutic gardens in 100 centers, in rehabilitation centers. We raised 400,000 shekels from over 2,000 people who became our community. They bought tickets to plant trees with us in rehabilitation centers to learn gardening and to help people that are in need. Now, what I really like doing at this stage, I want to kind of zoom out, because one of the things we have to understand is that if we want our economy to reconnect to the earth, we need to find a way to help our money go into the ground. I like calling it a true trickle-down economy. How do we let the end of our economy and every transaction in it making more carbon, more trees, more ecosystems, more foundations for our life, more oxygen production, more water filtration, more food, more energy production? And what you're looking at here is what we've done in the past 2 years. These are the organizations in us and around us. We've started creating plant nurseries inside the cities with people with disabilities working in them. We're interacting with cities, creating urban strategies for how to create an ecological city. And since the beginning of our organization, one thing we really made sure we're going to do is that our whole community needs to learn together. Because if our knowledge is only held in the people that are leading it, not everyone can collaborate in creating it. So we did a series of lectures called Forest City Lectures with thousands of people participating in them. And now corporate companies started buying these lectures for their workers. We talked about the language of fungi, and we talked about the technology of the forest. And we talked about the hive mind and organizational models inspired by nature. And we were teaching people gardening through Zoom by sending them packages of seeds in the mail, and everyone is participating together with their family and creating a greenhouse inside the city. Another thing we we did from the day that our organization started was we created a think tank. We called it Ecotopia. And our goal was to research together, to study how we can create a new set of values for our economy that makes building an ecosystem, being carbon positive and community positive, being a profitable act. How do you become richer by making the world richer around you? And this is where we're going. If we continue as we did till now, in 2.5 years, we're gonna have 92 tons of carbon in the soil per year. This is it from the workshops that we're doing. We're gonna have hundreds of thousands of people going into rehabilitation centers from the community, from all around, planting trees, creating a more forest city. We're gonna have 100 rehabilitation centers that are forests, gardens, community forests, therapeutic gardens with jobs for people around us. See, we're not just creating an ecological city, we're creating an ecological economy, and we want people to earn money and live in abundance while they are building the ecosystem. And something really amazing that I'm learning from this time is that COVID-19, if you zoom out of the crisis and out of the panic, and humanity is scared out of its guts already. And what I'm noticing is that humanity is practicing collaboration now. And everyone is saying yes to what we're proposing. Every municipality that we're speaking to, every individual, people are, you've probably noticed it, that you probably also in the COVID-19 crisis started growing more plants in your house and more plants around you and noticing the community around you. The world kind of became a little smaller. Virtually, digitally, everyone's talking to everyone really fast and the information is moving like crazy. And we need to take this knowledge, this data crunching ability, this mass knowledge, and learning how to bring it into cracking this question. How do we make our economy build the earth, build the ecosystem? Now, what I'm actually inviting, specifically the Weizmann scientific community, is I believe that planting the right trees in the right places, physically and metaphorically, is our ability to changing the course of history. And I really want to invite the scientific community, the people who learn, the people who study, the people who learn who know how to document and scale it up and replicate it. I want to invite you to join us in our think tank. And how do we take what we've done till now? Because something amazing has happened in the past 2 years in our NGO in Venatata. And I want to invite you to join and help us crack what happened here. And I also want to invite you to a variety of things of how you can join what we're doing. So first of all, money is amazing, and you can be part of our group of benefactors. People who put money into the Venatata NGO are people that are getting virtual workshops, that are learning how to garden, that are becoming part of a community of people who are making a forest city, accessing amazing tools. We have corporate workshops for companies that are buying lectures and tree planting events. We have companies that are creating big collaborations with us, public collaborations, where they decide to put a percentage of their income into the Venatata NGO for planting trees in rehabilitation centers, and they get exposed, and they are now known as a company that is planting trees that is ecological. And again, I invited you to be part of the think tank and inviting your companies and your organizations to be part of our operation and becoming sponsors of this amazing thing. Thank you so much.